relates to the fact that it is a multilateral organization, multilateral trade organization, which helps countries to smoothly carry out trade from one country to another country. Goods moving from one country to another country in a smooth manner without trade barriers. Now, they cannot eliminate fully, but they can do something on a case-to-case basis. Case-to-case basis means product basis, not the country basis. Not the case-to-case basis means that if it is USA, it will be something else. If it is China, it will be something else. No. Case-to-case basis means area to area. Like for example, agriculture, they are trying now.
Yes, sir.
Textiles, there were problems that have been sorted out.
Medicines.
Pharmaceutical still again some problems remain. I mean, even now. For example, USA puts a lot of non-tariff barriers for pharmaceuticals, like certification from FDA, Food and Drug Administration of US, right? So if you are approved by FDA, then only you can sell. But tell me one thing, practically, can WTO ask a country not to impose this condition of certification from Central Drug or Food Authority? I mean, is it possible? If suppose Indian government says that we will not allow foreign medicines to be sold in India unless they are approved by one of our central agencies, can WTO logically stop a country? Because it's a question of life and death, right? So people probably, it is possible, probably some of the countries may be misusing this, because WTO really cannot do much about non-tariff barriers. But suppose you impose, for example, 50% import duty on foreign medicines, suppose, then WTO can say that why are you imposing import duties? Rather, it should be duty free because it helps the people who are looking for those medicines. For example, in India, cancer drugs are mostly imported. So suppose the government of India imposes duty on that, so it will not be a very justified thing from the Indian government, right? So WTO can say about the direct barriers, but WTO cannot say about the indirect trade barriers, like certification from a central drug authority. And that is what is, as far as the pharmaceutical is concerned, that problem remains all over the world. And WTO is not really putting too much effort on this area, because this again is a very logical and sensitive area wherein you cannot really tell countries to do away with non-tariff barriers. It's not possible. In agriculture, it is possible, but in agriculture again, in fact, in agriculture, WTO is trying because there is no question of life and death. But some of the countries like India, they say that if you do something on agriculture, our farmers will die. They will do suicide. But that is debatable again, right? That is what actually Modi did in last round. After coming to power, Modi refused to cooperate with the world on trade facilitation pact, saying that we should get relaxation on agriculture, and it became a very big issue, and US had to intervene. In fact, Barack Obama had to intervene on personal grounds with Modi to not to talk about that, not to link agriculture issues with this trade facilitation pact, which is good for the world. India is the only country which was saying no. And as per the WTO Charter and agreements, which I will be discussing, each and every country has to. Even if one single member refuses to accept particular provision, it is not ratified. So India in other way, on the backdoor talk, was blackmailing the world, right? Saying that we want concessions with regard to agriculture, especially with regard to MSP, minimum support price, because ultimately Indian government give minimum support price. So it's a kind of subsidy, which WTO, as per the WTO principle, it is not justified. But India says that our farmers are vulnerable, and we have to take care of our farmers, which actually all the countries do. All other countries, even Europeans, European nations as well as US, they have several concessions given to farmers. So everybody tries to justify, and that's why agriculture issue is the most hot area in present times, especially in the Doha round. The present round of WTO is called Doha round. It started from Doha, and it has been going on for several years. It is still not finished. So their main aim is agriculture. Okay, pharmaceutical, they are not doing much on this because again, our results cannot come on pharmaceutical. And of course, there is another area where results cannot come, that is defense area, defense production. No country will agree. Whatever the countries are doing, they will say, okay, we are doing right. So I told you, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. When Jai Jawan means defense and Jai Kisan means agriculture. So these areas will remain problem area for some time. Agriculture may become easier in time to come, but defense production will remain a major concern. And what concern we are talking about? The concern we are talking about, the smooth flow. Tariff-free world, whether indirect or direct. Tariff barriers or non-tariff barriers, barrier-free world. Yes, so that is the role of WTO. So how does WTO works? What is the constitution of WTO? How WTO operates? Somebody can say that WTO is not the monopoly of US. It is not the monopoly of a particular country. Of course, because it's a membership-based organization. I told you in the earlier lecture also. It is like, for example, in a very simplified manner, it is like Lions Club or Rotary Club, where members are there, and in those kind of clubs, members decide how the club will be run, right? And in true spirit of WTO, which is the situation today, in fact, it is true that no single country has got a hegemony over this organization. Everybody is a member. Even a smaller members like I told you, Bangladesh, or I sent you one case study last year, Antigua and Barbuda. It's a very, very small country, a country of just 3 lakh people. Population is only 3 lakh.
So 1 lakh.
Is it 1 lakh? Maybe I may be wrong. So it's such a small country, right? Such a small country. Even they have the equal right being a member. They got a membership seat is there, as probably India has, or as maybe US has, and that's why this the case study which I sent you, it's an eye opener.
Yes, sir.
Taking on 1 lakh people, taking on the whole of US. It's very surprising, but that's a fact. So how does it work? How does it work? It works on certain rules. WTO works on certain rules, and those rules are the result of agreements between the members. And there is a very special feature of these agreements, that these agreements are also multilateral agreements, not bilateral. That's why you need so many rounds. I told you, I think in the earlier classes also, that A country meets B, B meets C, C meets A meets E, like that. So multilateral. And it takes time. That's why rounds are becoming longer. Because the number of countries are increasing, the number of members are increasing, and everybody has to sit together with each other in a multilateral manner and agree on something. And those agreements give birth to rules. Right? So WTO is a rule-based. And rules are negotiated agreements. Rules are negotiated agreements. For example, when Modi said that I will not be ratifying the Trade Facilitation Pact, which became a very big news internationally in WTO. So somebody can say that he was blackmailing the world. Somebody can say that he was negotiating. that you are not taking care of the India's interest in, for example, in the agriculture issue, wherein you are forcing India to do away with all the subsidy to the farmers.
Yes, sir.
And India is a poor country, and those poor people will die. So you are forcing India to do something which is equivalent to harakari or suicide for their own people. So what Modi was trying to do, he was trying to negotiate that, okay, I will sign the trade facilitation pact, but you give us some concessions on agriculture front, and which actually India got also. That's why now Modi government agreed for the pact. So they are nothing but negotiated agreements. These rules are created, documented rules are created through negotiated agreements. And these, of course, these agreements in totality covers goods, export and import of goods from one country to another country, services and intellectual property. Now, these agreements cover goods, services and intellectual property. Should they cover something else also? Do you think that there could be a role for WTO in some other areas apart from these goods, services and intellectual property? First of all, what is intellectual property?
Rights.
Intellectual property rights. What does it mean? Why WTO has to enter into this domain of intellectual property rights?
Dispute settlement. Dispute settlements.
Fine, dispute settlement, but what actually is intellectual property right, and why this domain is part of WTO? How does it really matter? It is understandable goods are being exported from one country to another country. That is called mercantilized trade. That is very much part of any such body. Services have become very important in modern times.
Intellectual property में तो patent हो गया.
Patents, copyrights. But how does it matter to business? How does it matter in an international context?
For competitive advantage.
Okay, competitive advantage of one country vis-a-vis other countries, right? So, but why it is a matter which has to be monitored by WTO in the international context?
Because in WTO there are many more members
Okay.
which follow the rules and regulations of WTO.
Yeah, all the members are there. All the members follow certain rules. Agreed.
So only WTO is
Can monitor, fine.
Yes.
But my question is, they can do a lot of things as far as the goods are concerned or services are concerned. Why intellectual property right also? What does it really matter? How does it matter? Intellectual property right. What are the objectives of WTO? The objective of WTO is to increase trade internationally, reduce barriers.
Yes.
In these aims and objectives, where does intellectual property rights fit in? Why this area has to be part of WTO functions or the WTO monitoring?
Sir, intellectual properties are necessary for poor countries to develop.
So you mean intellectual property, protection of intellectual property
Yes, sir.
is a major concern for poor countries?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
Anybody else?
they innovate, but they cannot protect their intellectual properties.
But as far as my knowledge goes, most of the innovations and patenting is done by rich countries, right?
But some problems are poor countries also, sir.
Some of the, okay, fine. Some, you are saying that some, like for example, India has been able to send,
Yes.
aircraft to Mars at a much cheaper price. So they might have used some technology which were new, and India might have got it patented.
Yes.
Okay. And there is another example that somebody patented Basmati
Yes.
Basmati rice in USA at the cost of Indian exporters, because we have been using Basmati rice, because of that we are selling our rice. So somebody in other countries will say that you cannot write Basmati. If you want to write Basmati, you have to pay me royalty, right? So to some extent you are right, but I want to add something. Intellectual property right is the right
Yes.
of everybody, whether it is rich, poor, any country. See what happens. Suppose you are doing international trading. In international trade, you are sending goods from one country to another country. Now, another country, they will import 10 items. They will simply copy it and start manufacturing. So technology, instead of paying for the technology, they just pay for the 10 pieces of the material and just copy it, and it's very cheap. That is what probably there have been allegations that that is what China was doing for so many years, right?
IPLC, sir.
Yeah, intellectual property rights. What China was doing, it is an allegation that before it became member of WTO, what it was doing, it will buy some aircrafts from some country, open everything, do re-engineering, copy it, and the technology is there.
IPLC में सर यही होता है ना?
IP,
LC.
intellectual product life. No, that's it. No.
सर उसमें भी वही होता है.
No, IPLC is a different concept. IPLC means selling goods which are obsolete in my country to another country. So shifting again the same problem. Even in IPLC, the problem is if you sell it in other countries, they will start copying it. So if somebody copies somebody's innovation or somebody's patent without permission, right, and there is no system of monitoring, trade will reduce, international trade will reduce, countries will be forced not to export their high-tech items, isn't it? Which will go against WTO objectives. So what happens?
Because of trade.
Exactly. So that should have been your answer. Your answer should have been that goods, trade in goods is okay, trade in services is okay, but to make sure that the trading in goods and services increases day by day, it is very important to protect the copyright, patents, innovations, formulas. It is very, very important. And that only can be done by WTO. So, in order to achieve these objectives, mainly two objectives, one is to increase trade, second is to make it barrier free. These were mainly the two objectives. It is very important that WTO should have in their functions monitoring of goods, services as well as intellectual property. If you remember in some of the classes or probably somewhere I discussed about that case study about the theft of music of Bangladesh by Anu Malik and Mahesh Bhatt, right? So it comes under that only, intellectual property. Somebody made a good music in Bangladesh and Bangladesh is a member of WTO.
Yes, sir.
Even if it is a small country. So somebody in our Bollywood thinks that it's a small country, what they can do, and then simply copy it without giving the royalty. Then WTO will come in picture. That how can you just copy somebody's music, which is also having the equal right in WTO, and you just copy. So if you copy, Mahesh Bhatt copies or Anu Malik copies, WTO will say that India has copied. They will not say Anu Malik has copied or Mahesh Bhatt has copied. They will say Indian government, they will talk to Indian government that how can India copy music of Bangladesh, right? And Indian government became very alert. So they immediately reprimanded Mahesh Bhatt as well as Anu Malik that how can you do this? And they made sure that they pay. They not only pay the royalty, they also pay the penalty. So they finally had to pay a lot of money before the thing would have gone in full dispute settlement. Panel process, it is called panel process, right? It did not go to the panel process. It was sorted out before that in the initial stages itself. Otherwise, WTO would have taken it in full dispute settlement in panel process. So, because now you take this example, music piracy. in this kind of environment where WTO is monitoring intellectual property rights, obviously people will feel safe in selling goods and services, and trade will increase. Like Bangladesh is buying so many Tata trucks, 3-wheelers, electric cars, Maruti cars, Honda, all passenger cars, bicycles. Everything is manufactured in India is selling in Bangladesh. And you will be surprised to know that Bangladesh is one of our major trading partners. Now, suppose the WTO is forcing India to be careful about music piracy. So, it is other way around also. If the Indian government finds that the Bangladeshi people are copying our technology, right? So, India can also go to WTO. So what will happen? Those governments will make sure that their local traders do not do any hanky-panky as far as the intellectual property right is concerned. So everybody will feel safe. Trade will increase. Nobody will mind selling their goods in international market. That's why that is the thing. WTO therefore has to look into all these things. But WTO can also look into other things which they are not doing. Can you tell me what are the other things which in future may come under WTO monitoring? Apart from goods, services and intellectual property right, there are other areas of business. I am giving you a hint. Agriculture. In agriculture what do? You supply agriculture produce. So that is already covered in goods. Is it not? Agriculture is already covered. Pharmaceutical is already covered. Engineering goods are already covered.
Culture.
Do you really think that WTO can enter into the areas like culture? I don't think so. In fact, there are other organizations which takes care of issues like culture and all, which is mostly the wings of United Nations. Right? Even IMF does not enter into culture area, or even World Bank will not enter into culture. So WTO will definitely not, because WTO is in fact the most prime organization, international organization, which deals with trade and business. Right? So I'm talking, there are certain areas still where WTO can have a monitoring role, apart from goods, services and intellectual property right. What are those areas where it is possible in future the WTO can enter? What are those areas? That's very important. These kind of questions can trigger a debate in your mind. It's very, very important. That's more important. It is not very important that whatever I am teaching, you ingrained in yourself. I mean, you should know that, obviously you should know that WTO works on agreements, and agreements are the result of some rules, and these rules are, the result of negotiated agreements. That is okay. That's very logical. There is nothing really a big rocket science about it. But the bigger issue is thinking beyond. A questioning mind. Why only goods? Why only services? Why only intellectual property right? Is business and trade and business is over when in these three? No. What are the other things? What? Where?
जिन कंट्रीज में सर तानाशाही चलती है.
So political system. Political. Do you think that WTO is a political organization? Whatever you know about WTO, do you really think that WTO will enter into political issues? For example, will it enter into the debate whether China should be a democratic country or a socialist? I don't think so.
Sir, but जब member countries sir जब request करेंगे तो हो सकता है.
See, even if suppose, okay, tell me one thing. You know Rotary Club, Lions Club, right? Some members are very rich, some members are very poor, right? Some members are Muslims, some members are Hindu, some members have a leftist thinking, some members have a rightist thinking. Have you ever heard that in a club, members say that other members should become like us? They should follow the same religion what we follow. They should follow the same thinking what we follow. If that is so, what will happen? The diversity of the group will be dented. You know, any organization, any club need members of different hues and colors. Some members are of one religion, some members are of other religion. Some members are Indians, some members are foreigners. It is good. Diversity is good. So suppose in this world, some of the countries have a socialist thinking. Some countries have a democratic thinking. WTO will be quite happy actually, because that thinking does not really impact the basic questions of increasing world trade and reducing the trade barriers. It actually helps. Because, why it helps? Because if there is a diversity of thoughts, you can look at the problems from different angles. So I do not see any possibility of WTO entering into the area of telling the members or the members telling the others that you should follow democracy or you should. I don't think so.
Funding is related, sir?
Funding what? What funding?
For poor countries or rich countries.
Investments. Correct. Because now you're right. One country investing into another country, right? Country A investing in B in C. Multilateral investment is never a single directional issue. If somebody is investing in India, Indians are also investing in other countries, right? Like trade. So it is very much part of business. Foreign direct investment, foreign institutional investments. These are the part and parcel of the world trade, which is still not part of WTO structure. In future it is possible, you are right, now you are right, in future it is possible that the issues with respect to funding, private funding, not the government funding, private funding. One company funding another country, another company in another country. Better word for this is investment, not the funding. Investments.
FDI.
Flow of investment from one country to another country. That can be part of WTO in future. But it is not there till now. It is not there. So, what are the three areas where it works? Goods, services and intellectual property, right? And these agreements spell out the principles of liberalization and permitted exceptions. See, ultimate aim is to liberalize. Ultimate aim is to liberalize. All the countries should have no barriers, but with exceptions. Why exceptions? Because every member is not of the same status, so economic status, that we have discussed many times. So the members who are not very rich, they have got some exceptions, concessions, like the same thing what Modi wanted, that in agriculture we should get some concessions. In reducing tariffs in agriculture or reducing subsidies in agriculture, India wanted concessions. These are the exceptions, right? They include individual country commitments to lower custom tariffs and other trade barriers and to open and keep open services market. The two things. When it comes to goods, what WTO expect from member countries? It expect from member countries either you reduce your tariffs immediately, or if you have problem, reduce in a phased manner. Like WTO can always say rich countries, do it now, immediately. But the same thing cannot be said to developing or underdeveloped countries. So they'll say, okay, do it in 10 years, 5 years, like that. But at the same time, when it comes to services, WTO, there is no question of tariffs. In services, you cannot have tariffs. You can have tariffs, tariff or non-tariff barriers, especially tariff barriers, you can only have in goods. You really cannot have tariff barriers in services. In services, you can have non-tariff barriers. Non-tariff barrier means you can have some conditions. that we will not allow these services. Like for example, in India, we have no system of, we do not really allow foreign newspaper to enter into Indian market in journalism. So newspaper is what? Services, journalism. So Indian government will not allow for whatever reasons. So what WTO says, the WTO expect from its member to keep their markets open for services. For example, India should allow insurance companies to enter into Indian market to do business. Or Indian government should allow consultancy firms or IT firms from international markets to do business in India, and vice versa. Other countries should also allow Indian companies to do business in services. And services can be of many types, services, consultancy services, it can be IT services, it can be insurance services, it can be travel services, right? What else? There is another very major area in services. Can you tell me what is that?
Banking.
Banking, very right. Banking, yes. What else?
Education.
Education. Perfectly all right. I was expecting this. Education is a very major area.
Telecom.
Telecom, yes, you're right. You're right. Telecom is also services. Research and development, R&D. I personally feel
For research and development, there.
research and development has got a lot of scope for Indian companies in the international market. Both ways. India should allow R&D companies to enter into Indian market. Indians should go in research and development. Like Indian, there is another area. The Indian system of medicine, Ayurveda.
Yes, sir.
Now the world is recognizing the value of the Indian system of medicine, Ayurveda. So under WTO environment, India can expect that many of the countries, Indians can try and set up their system of medicine, and probably their government may allow. Although many of the government will try to impose non-tariff barriers, like certification of the system by their central authority, which regulates medicines and medical services. It's not easy. For example, I'll give you one example on this. Do you know that which is the country which produces the maximum number of homeopathic medicines?
India, sir.
Nepal.
No.
The country which founded and which is the major player in homeopathic medicine is which country? Germany. It's Germany. The best medicines, homeopathic medicines, are German medicine, and it is widely used in India. India also manufactures, you're right, but people say that the kind of quality which you get from the German homeopathic medicine, they are the best. But you'll be surprised to know that in Germany, the homeopathic system of medicine is not allowed. The WTO expect its member countries to keep their markets open for services. Okay? Now there is a simple structure of agreements. There has to be some categories in WTO for these agreements. Category has to be there. And what are these categories? The first layer of the agreements are called the umbrella agreements. What is the meaning of umbrella agreements? The umbrella agreements are agreements related to the functioning of WTO. How will WTO function? There will be some rounds, and rounds will be held in certain manner. These umbrella agreements do not relate to goods, they do not relate to services, they do not relate to intellectual property right. They relate to what? The functioning of this, for example, club. So these are called umbrella agreements. Then in the second layer of agreements, there are agreements for each of the three broad areas of trade. What we discussed: goods, services, and intellectual property. So that is the second layer of agreements. So now you got four categories of agreements. One category is the umbrella agreement category, which deals with the functioning of WTO, how WTO should function, those kind of agreements. And the second layer of agreements relate to the three broad areas of trade: goods, services, and intellectual property that we discussed, right?
Third.
Now the category which relate to the second layer, the category which relate to goods, these are General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, GATT. General Agreement on Trade and Tariff. It is the same name which was the name of the whole organization because before WTO was formed in 1995. Earlier it used to be called as GATT, right? So the same name has been retained for this category of agreements, which relates to trade in goods, and the second category which relate to services. The name given is GATS, General Agreement on Trade in Services, right? And the third category which relate to intellectual property rights is called TRIPS. TRIPS. TRIPS का full form है Trade Related Agreements. Trade related agreements for intellectual property rights, TRIPS, right? Okay, so TRIPS, that is the third category. Then there is next layer of agreement. See, I told you the WTO whole structure is based on agreements. Why it is based? If it is not, please, but if it is not based on agreement, what will happen? There can be a dispute among members that somebody is creating a hegemony over this organization, which was a allegation made before WTO was formed. When it was GATT, there was a complaint that certain rich countries are taking advantage of this organization. So today WTO is purely agreement based. So we have already understood there is one layer which is the umbrella agreement, there is second layer which relates to goods, services and trade, and there is a third layer which relates to dispute settlement. How disputes will be settled. If there is dispute among members, dispute will be among members only. One member complains that the other member is not following the principles and objectives of WTO. It is going away in spite of being the member of WTO. If it is not a member of WTO, you really cannot do anything. Suppose some country is not a member of WTO, right? And they do some hanky-panky in international trade. You really cannot do anything. Can you really do something about a country which is not a member of WTO?
China.
Yeah. For example, China joined WTO not very long ago. Same is Russia. Russia also joined WTO not very long ago. And one of the latest entrant, for example, is South Sudan.
Yes, sir.
So there are countries which are still emerging and entering into WTO. So there are countries, there have been countries which are not a member of WTO. You really could not have done anything about that, right? But if somebody is WTO member and it is not following the principles and objectives of WTO or the international trade in a manner which is agreed in WTO, then one member can complain about another member. Like for example, what I told you about the music piracy of India. You know, in spite of the fact that India do not have any intellectual property right agreement with Bangladesh. That is what initially Mahesh Betta and Anu Malik said, that India do not have a treaty with Bangladesh.
Bombardier and Embraer.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Embraer and Bombardier. Bombardier of Canada and Embraer of Brazil. We took up this case study in one of the course earlier, wherein, you know, there was a dispute between these two companies which was taken care by WTO on the request of the governments of these two countries.
Yes, sir.
Companies cannot directly contact WTO,
Okay.
right? And all of this complaints and settlement has to be under the framework of these agreements. Layer 1, umbrella agreement. Layer 2, 3 agreements related to goods, services and intellectual property. Layer 3, dispute settlement. And layer 4, again another layer of agreements which concerns with the review of the government policies. And these policies are not the policies of democracy or socialism. It is the
Trade policy.
trade policy, foreign trade policy. Because the trade behavior, whether it is related to goods, whether it is related to services, whether it is related to intellectual property right, will be most visible through foreign trade policies only. A country will behave in a manner which is enshrined into the foreign trade policy of a country. For example, I'll give you an example. Suppose Indian foreign trade policy says that the duty structure of goods being imported into India will be like this, that there is some basic duty, then there is some additional duty, then there is some surcharge, there is some anti-dumping duty. And the policy says that the Indian government can impose some other kind of duty whenever it feels fit, right? So now what will happen? The other members will feel threatened. They will say, that our policy is not very transparent. They cannot plan doing business with India. Because today duty is something, tomorrow it may become something else. Because as per the policy, Indian government can impose some other kind of duties, which may not be acceptable to the world community, right? So this provision is where? In the foreign trade policy. So WTO has the mandate to review these policies and alert those governments about any anomalies which goes against the principles and objectives of WTO. So that is the last layer of agreements. Now probably you can tell me that all these layers can take care of all the functioning of WTO. Do you think that there is any other area which remains? Do you really think which should be part of WTO and which is not covered in these agreements? As I told you, whatever WTO does has to be agreed. And those agreements will become rules once they are ratified by all the members. Like for example, Trade Facilitation Pact, where India was refusing. Now India has also agreed. So it will become a rule. And all the rules has to be followed by all the countries. That is okay. Do you really think that there is something missing even now? Yeah. Do you really think that there is other areas where there should be certain agreements and wherein WTO functioning should be expanded? Do you think so?
It's a negotiation
Negotiation of what?
of trade.
Of trade? It's a very good point. What he's trying to say, that there should be some mechanism where the members can negotiate. But think of it. These agreements are what? These agreements are already negotiated agreement. These agreements are already negotiated between A to B, B to C, C to D, multilaterally. Now, what he is trying to say that there should be a room for further negotiation. After the rules have been made, there should be a room for further negotiation among the countries. But if that happens, then the sanctity of the rules will be gone. You make some rule and you still keep some scope for negotiation. You know what it will amount to? It will amount to a loophole. Isn't it? if you allow that and the loophole remains, certain countries can take advantage of that.
Yes, sir.
You are right. What he said was absolutely right. That it is possible. In fact, this anomaly actually was there in the earlier system of GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, before 1995, when WTO was not formed. But in the major change which came from GATT to WTO was the same. There is no scope for further negotiation. Once the rule has been made, it is final. Right? Nobody can challenge that rule. So that there is no loophole. And if there is no loophole, whether you are US, whether you are China, whether you are Antigua and Barbuda, small country or a big country or a rich country or a poor country, rule is same for everybody. And that's the beauty. Okay? Do you really see, because of this rule-based system, WTO has become very transparent.
Yes.
Right? And because this is transparent and rules are same, what is happening? The poor countries are becoming rich. Yeah. I mean, they are improving their income levels. The income levels of these countries are improving. And that's why this is one of the major reasons why the power is shifting to the emerging markets like India, China, Brazil, Russia. Why? Because they have a system, international system, which is very transparent and which takes care of it tries to balance out the economic conditions of the world, isn't it? So that makes WTO system very interesting. But what you said was right. Any other observation on this? Any other observation on this point? Are you satisfied with this whole structure? It takes care of, umbrella agreement takes care of the general functioning of WTO, which is not related to any transaction, right? It talks about the administrative part of WTO. The second layer deals with the core area, goods, services and tax import, right? Third layer deals with the dispute settlement, how the disputes will be settled. Because everything should be based on some rules, and rules can be the result of agreements only, right? And the third, review of government trade policy. So what it says, it says that it is a six part. Are there six part? Just have a look.
Yes, sir. 3 in the second layer.
3 in the second.
Second layer.
3 in the second. So it becomes a 6 part. I have a figure also. Let me show you that figure. Probably I have this figure. That is very interesting figure. Yeah. Yeah, this figure. If you look at these figures, it will give you a better idea of these agreements. One layer is the umbrella layer. Do you see that? And what does it mean? What does the umbrella agreement means? Agreements related to establishment of WTO, which means administrative part.
Yes, sir.
Agreements related to establishment of WTO. Look at the second layer. Second layer deals with the goods, services, and intellectual property. And within each of these three, agreements relates to some subcategories. What are these subcategories? First category is the basic principles. What are the basic principles?
Okay.
Which are categorized as GATT, GATT,
That's
and TRIPS. And there is another subcategory within this category which deals with other details. And what are these additional details? Right? Those are additional to the core. That is additional to the core. Other goods agreements and annexures. If there is something connected with, like I'll give you one example. In goods, for example, trade in pharmaceutical will come. For example, pharmaceutical we were talking about now, that one country can export medicine to another country. It's a good set, and it will be there, very much there. But in pharmaceutical, there will be some additional information that what are the systems related to regulating the safety of the citizens from the spurious drugs. Spurious. For example, I'll give you what is the meaning of spurious drugs. China has been accused time and again in selling medicines which were spurious in nature, especially the medicine related to kids, children, right? And they were threatening the safety of the citizens, right? So there will be some details with regard to, GATT will have the detail with regard to the tariff which can be imposed. But the additional detail will relate to the measures taken by different countries and agreed by each and everybody on how to make sure that the safety of the citizens is met. Like for example, in case of USA will always say that we don't mind, you sell medicines, and tariff barrier may not be there. It may be 0% duty, but it is very much logical that we have the regulations related to certification by FDA, Food and Drug Administration, and every country has to agree. But at the same time, all other countries will say that we will also have something like this. If you can have a FDA, we will also have some authority in our country. So if you sell your goods, you also have to get the certification. Like for example, it is possible Indian government will say that anything you sell in India, which is related to medical or medicines, should be approved by ISI, Indian Standard Institution. It is possible. And if we agree for their FDA, they have to agree for our. So these will come in the additional details, those agreements, right? Annexures, additional agreements, those kind of things. So that is the second layer. Second layer. So total 4 agreements, 4 categories. First umbrella and these 3. Then there is another part of it in the second one only. That relates to agreements related to commitments. Commitment, what are the commitments we discussed recently? What does this commitment means?
Promise.
Promise of what? These agreements relate to reduction of duties, right? Which is in the core as well as in addition. Then there is a third category which relates to commitment. What is that? This I discussed just now only.
Sir, country related to tariff. If
Commitment?
Yes, sir. If they are charging, initially they are charging less tariff, and after some time they are charging more than the
Government commitments about trade policies, sir.
Trade policies, but what is the main commitment?
the import duty and other.
Increase or decrease? You are talking increase. No.
Reducing or trade.
Reducing.
Yes.
Trade.
See, I told you that WTO can ask rich countries to reduce immediately. But WTO cannot ask developing and poor countries to reduce immediately. So what they will ask?
Yeah.
That you promise
Yes, sir.
Yes.
that in next 10 years or 15 years, you will reduce it to 0 or 5% or whatever it is. So that will come in the third category, those commitments. Right? So now you understood that the second layer has got 3 subcategories. One is the core category, which is the basic principles. Basic principle is in these goods, duty should be 5%, 0 to 5%. Or like for example, computer products, duty should be 5 to 10%. Automobile duty should be 10 to 15%. Basic principles. That is very, very, very basic. Additional means product specific. That in this product basic is okay. Basic principle is okay. But there is something more to it. More to it. There's a requirement of a particular product, like for example medicine or some other product. or even agriculture. So that will come in the second category, and the third category will be commitments. Now these commitments will be mainly from the developing and underdeveloped countries. The third part will be mainly for that purpose. Developed countries are not required for any commitment. They have to do it. They have to, actually what is the basic principle? The rich countries should follow the first one, the basic principle. They should go as by the basic principles. Because they are rich. They are not supposed to have any riders actually, in practical. But it is possible, some country will say. Like for example, in medicine case, rich countries will also say that we want some non-tariff barriers, which should be allowed in the form of some certification agency. Fine, it's okay. Clear? And any question on that? We still have 10 minutes, then we'll have a break. Then the next layer, dispute settlement. And the last layer is also called transparency layer. What is the meaning of transparency? And these are the agreements layer, wherein every country has to disclose their trade policy completely, and it is to be reviewed by WTO, so that everybody knows that okay, this policy is very transparent, very clear, and if there is any problem, WTO can ask that country to review the policy and make amendments. I think it is fair enough. This 6-part agreement structure. This is how WTO works. This is one example. This is one example. These 3 layers which I told you, no? In the like for example, first is the broad principle, second is the annexure of extra agreement, and third is list of commitment. This we already discussed. So I don't think you have to. This is already clear.
Yes.
Okay. Let us see if we have missed anything. Just have a look on this slide. Have we missed anything in this? 6 part is clear there, right? Umbrella, 1 part, GATT, 2nd part, GATT's 3rd part, TRIPS, 4th, then dispute settlement, 5th, and trade policy review, 6. Have we missed anything? Just read the first lines. The basic structure of WTO agreements is how the 6 main areas fit together. One is the WTO umbrella agreements, then goods, services, intellectual property right, disputes, and trade policy. Let me tell you, there is another area which is not part of the agreement, but it is part of the WTO. And probably it comes under the first umbrella agreements. That is the training part. WTO has to provide training to member countries about the functioning of WTO. There is a wing in WTO which has to tell countries.
So that they can easily follow the rules and regulations of WTO.
You know, otherwise, for so many years when it was GATT, there are so many myths and stereotypes related to WTO. For example, if you ask any state government in India that we are doing this for WTO, they will say, oh, WTO, they are like that only. It is ruled by USA, it is ruled by this country, and you cannot force us. WTO cannot quit WTO from India. You know, they start speaking like this. That like they quit India movement, like Britishers, Bharat Chodo, WTO, Bharat Chodo. You know, like, because of myths, because of stereotypes. So, if people know about WTO, these problems will be less, right? In fact, we will be taking up one case study in the next lecture as per the plan, which will relate to the agriculture trade. There is a case study which I will send you. The same problems are there. If you read this case study, you will realize that at the central government level, people know about WTO. They know what is right and what is not right. But the state level, people don't agree. Oh, WTO. No. They think of themselves. As if WTO is some country. That they will think of themselves. WTO is not a country, it's a club. It's a platform. Right? So they are not aware. And because of that, any representation made by Indian government with certain product areas, especially agriculture, where state is a major player in agriculture. Without states comments or the commitment, you really cannot represent Indian view about trade and agriculture in WTO. It's not possible. The central government, without the consent of state governments, cannot represent India in agriculture matters. Is it right or wrong? Agriculture, is it a state subject? Mostly state subject or is it mostly central subject?
States.
It's mostly state subject. Because why it is so? Can somebody tell me? Why agriculture is more of a state subject than central? Can somebody tell me?
So they are the producer.
Because in India, agriculture accounts for the maximum employment. And every state, the first priority is agriculture only. And every state is accountable to their farmers. It may not be true for states like Delhi, which is a union territory, or maybe some other smaller state. But even the smallest of the state, the major occupation of the people would be agriculture only, including Goa. Now, Goa is a very small state. Even in Goa, the major occupation of the people would be agriculture only, right? So, state government to survive in those states is surviving on the votes of the people who are producing agriculture products. And to get votes from them, they are more accountable to their people. So, it is more of a state subject than the central subject. But the problem is, at the state level, they don't really know the significance of WTO.